Hey guys, VP here, and this is the video I told you I was going to make after the very first video I did of this series. If you haven't seen that original video talking about my overall strategy, please pause and go watch it now. I think it's worth your time. But if you already have, or if you don't want to, that's fine. I will just recap everything here. So my goal with all of this, and the reason I'm putting the time and money into it that I am, is to accumulate as many blueprints from Illuvium Zero as I possibly can. Blueprints create skins. Skins for almost every MMORPG that you play are the most lucrative moneymaker for that company. But this time, instead of that money going to a company, they're actually going back to you. And I like the idea of that. I think there's great asymmetry here. So that is going to be my goal, and anything else that happens outside of that is just icing on the cake, really. So I had 5 Ethereum to spend. I participated in the Dutch auction. And it went better than I thought it was going to go. I think it went better than a lot of people thought it was going to go price-wise. And I ended up with 2 Tier 2 lands and 3 Tier 1 lands. Now, the reason I even got the Tier 2 instead of just a bunch of Tier 1 is because I want to make sure I have enough fuel to do the things I need to do. And also, I have to find out how long this is going to take out of my day to get everything set up. And we just don't know what that's going to look like yet. So honestly, I probably could have ended up with 10 Tier 1 lands, but I may have really regretted that. But it worked out well. So well that I could probably buy at least one more land later, at least one more Tier 2 for sure. But that whole situation is going to be its own video, so stay tuned for that. But simply buying this land was only a very small part of the overall strategy. As we know, or I hope everybody knows by now, blueprints make skins, which is great. But the problem is, there's going to be 10,000 skins for people to pick from, and not all of them are going to be skins that people want. Now, how much of a kick in the ass would it be if you spent all this time trying to get blueprints and you finally get some, and you're super excited, and you go through the effort to actually create the skins, and nobody wants them? As blueprint barons, this is one of the many risks that we face. Apart from the fact that there's still just a lot that we don't know. We're only operating on what we do know, and some of what we think we know is just speculation or things that could change down the line. Remember that. But if I'm going to spend my money on this land, and I'm going to spend time cultivating it, I want to make sure that I'm in the best position to make the most lucrative skins I possibly can make. Now, how do we do that? Well, there's no perfect way because, again, there is still a lot that we don't know. So all we can do is take the information we have and do the best with it. And that's what I did. And so let's start by going to one of my favorite Illuvium YouTubers, Scoriox. If you don't know Scoriox, not the Illuvial, the YouTuber. For my money, he's got the best channel in the game. And there was a video he made that I think a lot of people probably either didn't see or are just flat out sleeping on. But I found it to be extremely helpful. Let's go take a look. Okay. So here is Mr. Scoriox right here, and let's scroll down a bit so you can see the name of this. It's called Which Illuvium Location Will Have the Most Profitable Land? Now, the whole reason he made this was to see which region or which land in which region would give you the highest ROI if you tried to flip it soon after the auction, which is not what we're trying to do here. But the data he collected was super helpful. So what he did is he went to Discord and he just ran searches on how many times somebody said Atlas or Axodon or Titanor or Fire, and this is what he came up with. And this is perfect. It's data mining 101. And as far as alluvials go, people are clearly excited about Atlas. In terms of actual land, they are excited about fire and water, at least excited enough to talk about it. And you can see as he scrolls down a bit, you see earth and nature. And there's just not as much excitement going on there as there is up in fire and water. And then air is pretty mediocre. And outside of Kuka, no other air alluvials were even really mentioned. Now, if you look over here, he kind of totaled everything up. And water was the winner, followed very closely by fire, and then there was a big drop-off. So take note of this. Air did end up being third, and then nature pretty far behind that, and earth even further behind that. So when you aggregated everything and scored everything up, this is how everything came out. Now again, maybe you think this isn't much, but we don't have a lot to go on. We certainly didn't at the time. So we have to use the information we do have. Now, what we also had is this here map, courtesy of Illuvium.io. And what you can do here is you can hover over and click, and it'll give you a quick description of the land and then tell you some of the common alluvials you can expect to see there. And this, combined with what we just saw, was pretty helpful. Now, for some reason, you think that none of this is helpful now because the land sale is gone. You're about to see real soon that you are in a better position now than I was then. So you can replicate this strategy or you can even improve on it. Anyway, let's take a look at things here. So if we go to the Halcyon Sea and click on it, that is where Atlas is. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to be lucky enough to get an Atlas skin, but you can't win if you don't play. So this is going to be the top place I look to be, because not only was Atlas mentioned a lot, water was mentioned a lot as well. It was at the top of Scoriox's list. I'm going to make sure that no matter what, I get land in the Halcyon Sea. Now keep in mind, at the time, before the Dutch auction, I thought with 5 ETH, I would probably be lucky to get 3 plots of land. Now, another place I want to make sure I went was the Crimson Waste, because Ramfy's here. And Atlas is kind of the mascot for the whole game. That's going to be your Pikachu, to where I think Ramfy's going to be your Charizard. And Scoriox is another one that a lot of people really like. Plus I think fire skins would have a really great look to them. So Crimson Waste is definitely on the list as well. Over to Brightland Steppes. Haven't really heard much about any of these alluvials, so not much interesting there. Shard Bluff does have Flare. Flare has been getting some play lately, but that's really the only one on that list. Crystal Shores. Some people are talking about slapping the Penguin, but not so much on the other two. Tiger Boreal, there's Kuka. They're trying to make a push for Dash, but I don't think people are really taking to him. Vermie's not very popular. And Abyssal Basin. They're trying to push Archie, but I just don't think he's taking as well as some of the other ones are. So from an actual alluvial perspective, I'm looking at Halcyon Sea for sure, Crimson Waste, and then maybe Shard Bluff. So when it came for me to make my own tier list, mine looked more like this. Okay, so back to the old PowerPoint we go. Do you guys like this PowerPoint setup? I like it. It's super basic, but it's really easy to read. But based on the information I gathered, I put the popularity tiers like this. So fire and water were definitely at the top. Pretty hard to dispute. Air I had in the middle. I wasn't overly impressed with it, but the data showed that interest was there. And then at the bottom we had Earth and Nature. Now, unfortunately, Scoriox is not buying my land for me. I'm the one buying land, so I have to decide what order I would put these in. Because at the time, again, I was under the impression that I was only going to be able to buy 3 parcels of land. So I need to prioritize these the way I need to prioritize these. So I kept fire and water at the top, but I really do think Earth is going to be underrated. I'm certainly not the only person who thought that. You did have one of the slightly more popular alluvials there. In the actual game, everybody is probably going to need a tank, and most of the tanks are Earth alluvials, or at least most of the better ones are. And so I think just Earth alluvials in general are going to be more popular than a lot of people think they're probably going to be. And here's something else that I don't know if anybody thought of. We're talking skins here, right? Now, I don't know if the devs have thought of this either, but if you're going to create any type of skin that is made from gold, silver, any metal, diamonds, where do all those things come from? They come from the Earth. So when I did my final tier, it looked more like this. I moved Earth up and actually put it ahead of Air, and then we left Nature on the bottom. Kind of feel bad for Nature in a way, Maybe it's the green and brown color scheme that people aren't down with, but I think there's going to be some opportunities there. But just if we had to put these in order, this is probably where I would put mine. So now the question of exactly where comes up. And I imagine most of you have seen this table before. But for those of you who haven't, you have the names of the regions over here. And then SW means spawn rate. So what I think this means is in the overworld version of the game, this is the probability of a particular alluvial spawning in that area. Now, what does this mean for skins? We don't know. But again, we just have to take the information we do have and do our best with it. So I'm just going to reasonably assume that in Illuvium Zero, the alluvials that I'm going to be scanning for in certain lands are probably going to have a similar probability. Fair to say, right? So right off the bat, there's a few interesting things I noticed on this. If you go to nature, there are 4 whole areas that really don't give you anything as far as nature goes. And they just happen to be 4 places I was interested in. Go figure. Fire. You don't get any fire out of the 2 nature-heavy regions. And that's not good because I definitely want fire. Crystal Shores turned out to be very interesting. And overall, at the end of the day, a pretty coveted area because of the even amount it gives you in everything but nature, which most people turned out to want the least. So my strategy for the Dutch auction was to sit back and wait for the first 3 or 4 hours to go by, see where the price was going to be, and also see which lands were more popular than others. And if you guys were paying attention to this as well, you learned that Taiga Boreal and Halcyon Sea were both quite popular. These were the regions that ran out first, typically, especially in the beginning. And I would say Crimson Waste was usually a solid third, and then sometimes Crystal Shores. And then areas like Shard Bluff, Brightland, and Abyssal Basin were usually last. Those were the ones you could still kind of grab at the end for the cheapest price. Not too much cheaper, but they were definitely last. So the very first plot I bought was Halcyon Sea because I wanted it. Might have overpaid a little bit for it, but that's okay. And then I ended up getting Shard Bluff because I wanted that earth exposure. And I got that at a pretty good price. And then I ended up getting Crystal Shores because of the reason I told you before. You get nice coverage on almost everything. And then, I looked and saw the prices. I'm like, I'm going to be able to get 4 or 5 plots of land here. This is really good. So I went ahead and got Crimson Waste as well. And I really did want it. I probably would have gotten that instead of Crystal Shores, but I knew I had room for both. So here is what things looked like after all that was done. So I took everything and I totaled them up to see how much exposure I actually had. And I was killing it on fire and earth both, which is no surprise. Water was doing pretty well. Not really where I wanted it, though. I did need more water exposure. I thought I would have had more air, but that was really low. And nature was very low, and I was not surprised at all. But I told myself I was getting 1 more land, and it had to be somewhere. So where do I go? I didn't really want to double up on anything. So it was either going to be Taiga Boreal, Brightland Steppes, or Abyssal Basin. Now, I wanted to get my water up, so Brightland Steppes is probably going to be a no there. But then in the end, Taiga Boreal was just too good to pass up because I got some water, I got my air back to a reasonable level, and I got extra fire. I am good with all 3 of those things. Again, felt bad for nature. I do want more nature exposure, but if I have to lag in one, I think most people would agree this is where you're going to want to lag. It is what it is. So in the end, it looked like this. Terrible exposure to nature. Got my water up to a better level. Fire, killing it. Earth, happy. Air, is what it is. And this is where I currently am. And hopefully I was able to provide you with a good reason as to why. Now, everybody's strategy is going to be completely different. Please feel free to leave yours down below and tell me why. What parts of my strategy do you agree with? What parts do you not agree with? I'm a big boy. You can criticize me all day. This is just the way I want to play it. And if you're not in the game, like I said before, I got good news for you. Here on Token Trove, the floor is 0.357. Earlier this morning, I'm shooting this on Thursday, actually, not releasing it till Friday. But Thursday morning, this was sitting at 0.32. That is a big drop from yesterday, which I told you was going to happen. If you guys watched my video on the Illuvium Zero delay, I even said when delays happen like this, expect a drop. Now, if you look at Tier 1 land, this is really the land that dropped the most. And also I've noticed too, it's not really region specific. Like I've seen Halcyon Sea be the cheapest land. A lot. You can get Crystal Shores really cheap right now. There's Halcyon Sea. It's out there. My average price that I bought my Tier 1 land was right about 0.4 ETH. So you can currently get in cheaper than me. And I would probably expect these things to drop further. Now what's interesting is Tier 2 land is holding pretty steady at 1.2, where it's been holding for a long time. I have a theory about this. I think that most flippers don't have a lot of money, or at least don't have enough to, be running around buying Tier 2 and 3 lands and stuff like that. So they usually stick to the Tier 1s, and liquidity is very important to them. They need to sell things relatively fast, and if the game isn't going to come out when it is supposed to come out, or when they said it was going to come out, and there's going to be a delay, you can expect them to drop the price, and I think that is what happened. So that's where we are, everybody, and we have so much more to talk about on these matters, and so much new information coming out too. Keep it locked right here. Subscribe, hit the bell, give me a like. I hope you enjoyed my crazy ramblings into my deep dive strategy, and I will see you down the road.